This recording will describe the questions and demonstrate the functionality associated with Screen 5.0, Sterilization of Components/Equipment by Moist Steam in the Sterilization Process Validation QBR. Screen 5.1, General Information. This screen asks the user to identify the autoclave loads used at the facility for the sterilization of components and equipment. To add a load, click the Add New Item button. The first box of the new screen asks you to identify the load. After entering the load identifier, the next box asks for a description of the load used for the validation cycle, as well as the production cycle, if they differ. Additionally, any information regarding a bracket, master load, or worst case load should be entered here. The last box asks for a justification of the thermocouple and biological indicator locations, including the number of thermocouples and biological indicators. Load diagrams and other details with summary data to support the justification should be provided in Module 3. Each of these boxes requires information to be entered, and hints can be opened by clicking on the yellow light bulbs. After entering the information for the first load, the Add New Item button can be clicked to add and describe the next load. This opens a new screen that is identical to the screen for load 1. This process can be repeated for all loads that are being submitted. The horizontal blue arrows at the top of the screen allow for the cycling between loads. Alternatively, you can click the List button to show a list of all the loads that have been entered. In the list, loads can be deleted individually using the Delete Item button, or all loads can be deleted using the Delete All Items button. Clicking either of the delete buttons will prompt a question ensuring that this is the correct action. The loads can be moved up or down the list using the vertical blue arrows in the upper right corner. Clicking the Info button will bring up information on how to use this screen. Once all cycles have been entered, proceed to the next section by double-clicking on section 511 in the navigation menu, or by clicking the green Next arrow. Screen 511, Validation and Production Parameters. This screen asks the user to identify the validation and production parameters of the autoclave cycles. All the fields located on this page are required. For each load, the autoclave number, room number, and autoclave cycle number are requested if applicable. You can identify which cycle you are currently describing by referring to the load identifier field at the top of the page. It will be the cycle that you most recently had selected in section 5.1. The cycle time, temperature set point, and number of thermocouples are requested for both validation and production conditions. The number of biological indicators is only requested for the validation conditions. If this information is shared between loads, it can be saved into the data book. A completed load can be saved to the data book for future use. Useful information for the use of the data book feature can be viewed by clicking on the hint icon. A name for the data is provided by default and is based on the cycle ID, but you may also enter your own. Once you have entered a name for this load, click OK to save this information to the data book for the Equipment and Components section. You'll be notified that the data has been successfully saved. Once data have been saved to the data book, they may be retrieved for future use by re-accessing the data book. The data book interface allows the user to browse all previously saved autoclave load parameters. The screen also allows for the editing of saved data book features, as well as deletion of saved data book entries. To apply the parameters from a saved data book entry to the current cycle being edited, choose Select while the relevant entry is highlighted. You should still confirm that the information copied from the data book is accurate once it is imported. Click on the next arrow to proceed to section 512, Biological Indicator. This screen asks the user to identify the biological indicator used for validation. You can identify which load you are currently describing by referring to the load identifier field at the top of the page. It will be the load that you most recently had selected in section 5.1. The first box asks for the species of the BI. In the next field, indicate whether this BI is a spore suspension or a spore strip. Next, indicate whether this BI is prepared in-house or purchased from a manufacturer. Note that the required information is dependent upon the source of the indicator. Complete all remaining fields. All fields must be completed to continue. Once you've entered the information describing a given biological indicator, you are able to save these entries for use in describing other loads through the use of the data book feature, in a similar manner to its use in the previous section. Again, when retrieving data from a saved data book entry, you should confirm that the information copied from the data book is accurate once it's imported, particularly since information regarding lot numbers, populations, and D values are not saved in the data book. Also note that COAs for all biological indicators described in this section should be included in Module 3. Click on the next arrow to proceed to section 513, Validation Run Results. This screen asks the user to include the results from the validation runs. You can identify which autoclave load you are currently describing by referring to the load identifier field at the top of the page. It will be the load that you most recently had selected in section 5.1. Fill in the first field with the acceptance criterion for the minimum F sub 0 for validation of the load. Fill in the second field with the acceptance criterion for the biological indicator for validation of this load. Once you've entered these acceptance criteria, you're able to save these entries for use in describing other cycles through the use of the data book feature, in a similar manner to its use in previous sections. Again, you should confirm that information copied from the data book is accurate once it is imported. Once the acceptance criteria for your validation runs have been entered, the Run Results section asks the user to enter data from completed validation runs. CVM's expectations regarding what data are required to support full validation of an autoclave load can be found by clicking on the hint icon. To add the results from a validation run, click the Add Run Result button. Enter the date the run was completed, the minimum F sub 0 achieved, and the biological indicator results. Once multiple runs have been entered, they can be selected by clicking and reordered within the display using the blue Move Run Result buttons. Note that run results are not saved in the data book and must be entered separately for each load described. To enter information for other autoclave loads, return to section 5.1, General Information, by clicking that section on the left navigation pane. In the load list, click on the next load for which you would like to complete sections 511 through 513. Once that load is selected, click on the green Next arrow. Remember to refer to the load identifier text field to confirm that you are editing the desired load. You can now enter information regarding the validation and production parameters, biological indicator, and validation run results for other autoclave loads in sections 5.511 through 513, just as you did for the first load. You may again enter values manually or import values from saved data book entries. Once you have completed sections 511 through 513 for all autoclave loads employed at this facility, proceed to section 5.2 Requalification, either by using the navigation arrows at the top of the screen or by double-clicking on section 5.2. This screen asks the user to describe the requalification strategy. As the hint indicates, this includes what loads are used for requalification studies, what loads are covered by the BREC but not requalified, and the frequency of requalification. Brackets, master loads, and worst case loads, if utilized, should also be justified here. Note that this section allows for the entry of tables and symbols, as well as editing of this section in the pop-out window, as well as advanced HTML-based editing. The next question asks if re-sterilization of filters or stoppers is proposed. If the answer is yes, you will be asked to describe the data provided to demonstrate that multiple sterilization cycles do not impact the integrity of the filter or stopper. Full reports or supporting information should be provided as part of Module 3. The answer is no. No further information is required.